Okay, so here we have Michael Grimmett, doing an interview with Michael Grimmett. So can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, so I'm a 43-year-old wheelchair user who lives in Romsey in the UK. I live independently with the support of personal assistance. I have cerebral palsy and a speech impairment.
So could you, for listeners who don't know, or what viewers that don't know much about cerebral palsy, could you tell us a little bit about cerebral palsy, how it affects your
Oh,
life?
oh, Shannon, you put me on the spot there. So, cerebral palsy is a muscle and nerve condition that affects how the nerves react to signals sent by the brain. But that's all you know. I just have it. I don't know much about it, but yeah, I just have it. So yeah,
So how does it affect you? How does it sort of affect you?
yeah, I had it Bentley. It made me several years maybe become a wheelchair user and yeah, and it gave me a speech impairment amongst other things. Yeah, so I just need support to live my daily life, really.
Okay, cool. That's brilliant. Um, so obviously you are a disability inclusion trainer and speaker. You just need to take
And
a LinkedIn page to see all of the massive
I
amount of training and seminars you do. Um, could you tell me a little bit about that and your experiences there? What sort
was so I mainly do disability training or sorry, disability inclusion training on a whole wide of subjects. So mainly around the way that society looks at disability, the language of disability, um, accessibility and inclusion. So what the difference is between them. So I always say that accessibility, the actual physical thing, so that it could be a ramp or a hearing loop, but the inclusion bit is how that customer feels within that setting, and the actual two things are completely different. I also do let's talk about the intersectionality of disability. So what that means is that how 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 people who have multiple impairments you find it difficult sometimes to to get society to recognise that. So just because, for example, you have a physical impairment doesn't mean you don't have another impairment that is also hidden. So it's about how society can recognise everybody and the actual fact that 80% of disability is invisible.
yeah, that's brilliant. I definitely get that. I'm definitely count one of those people, epileptic and autistic. So people will see my epilepsy, but they don't often see autism. So definitely get that. Um, so what inspired you to work as a disability inclusion advocate?
Well, I would say that ideally I wouldn't want to do this job. I always find it ironic that there's a lot of disabled people who do this for a job, but not too many non-disabled people who do this kind of thing, and that is because we have lived experience. But in an ideal world, I wouldn't be doing it because we'd all be perfect and I'll be doing something
Yeah,
else. So the reason for me to do it, to be quite honest, is because I thought I was good at it, and then and then I kind of grew it, and also I learn of other people. So I always say that every day is a school day, and you can learn a lot from other people's posts on LinkedIn, and because you're a disabled person yourself doesn't always mean that you are an expert on it. So, but yeah, those are the main reasons that yeah, I thought I was really good at it. I wanted to learn more and develop my own skill set, really.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Definitely understand that. The same, just looking through your LinkedIn page, that's something I definitely learn a lot from that stuff. Obviously, yeah, there's some great stuff on there, a lot of talks and all of that you do. I think I saw
Mhm.
one you were talking about societal perceptions of disability. I was wondering if
Yeah,
you could, if you had any thoughts on that you'd be happy to raise, especially in terms of going to work, what people like think of what see about disability, if there are any myths.
yeah. I think people, I think non-disabled people can sometimes think it's easier for people to see an impairment, and then they can get their head around that. So I always say that I'm quite fortunate that people can see my impairment, and they can obviously hear my impairment because of my speech impairment. But actually, 80% of disability is hidden, and therefore I think society find that difficult to adjust to in relation to getting jobs, and the actual perception of disability is quite difficult. So, for example, like, yeah, if you're neurodivergent, you may need extra support at interviews. You might want the interview questions beforehand, that kind of thing. And to be equal, that would mean that every single candidate would also get the interview questions in advance as well. And that is fine because I always say that I just want to be treated equally. So if I'm not as good as another candidate, then that is absolutely fine with me. If I'm not as good, just because I'm not as good, then that is fine. But I don't want to be put at a disadvantage just because of my disability. So I think that that is what the bare minimum self of people should expect, is just to be treated equally and to be treated the actual yeah, treated equally really.
Yeah, yeah, that. Um, like you're saying with your ones, there's quite a lot of your cerebral palsy. There's quite a lot of visible elements to it. But you talk a lot about like the hidden side of disability. What sort of things would you say are hidden for you that you'd like people to know about more?
Um, so with most of my impairment is um you can see it, but what you can't see is the fact that I'm also neurodiverse myself. I'm I have, like, for example, I have a dislocated right hip. Today I have severe sciatica in that hip. Um, but you can't see all that. So therefore, like, I just think I just think that people need to be more aware of what they don't see, and there's a lot of judgments out there, and actually quite a lot of unconscious bias, and that is fine because you're always scared of what you don't know.
Mm.
So, like, if you don't know something, then the natural thing is to be scared of it, when if it was seen and talked about in everyday life, then people wouldn't be so scared about it. If you look at through the history of disability, you know, until about 28 years ago, give or take a bit, wheelchair users weren't in mainstream school and stuff like that. So we have come a long way, and and we need to be positive about that. But we can, obviously go go a bit further.
Yeah, that actually the on to my next question pretty well. So obviously you talk a fair amount about how society needs to change its approach to disability of all kinds. Um, in your view, how do you think society needs to change in the way it addresses, looks at disability, how we can support disabled people?
So I think that would go back to the social model of disability. The social model looks at a disability being a societal issue rather than an individual's, you know, that individual problem. So I just think we just need to go back to that and look at the how the barriers are and what is stopping people from participating in society equally, and then look to remove those barriers. And then, those can be broken down into, four main areas. So you got the physical barrier, which is like the built environment. You got the attitudinal barriers of people's like unconscious biasness or attitude towards disability. So, for example, would be if you wanted to get, if you were a wheelchair user and you wanted to get into a restaurant and there was no ramp, and the owner said to you, "Oh, but not many wheelchair users want to come here because disabled people don't really go out." That's and then an example of an attitudinal barrier. And then you've got a communication barriers such as um, hearing loops, braille.
Real. Okay, so something you talk about a lot on your in your training and your inclusion speaking is how we need to be changing approach to disability, how society needs to change its approach to disability in terms of supporting people and how it views um, disability. And one of the things that you've brought up before is the societal model. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
And so the social model came about in the late 80s, and it looked at how disability is a societal problem and not an individual's problem, like as in the medical model or a charity model. And the social model looks at a disabled person as well and how to remove those barriers. And there's lots of pillars within it, but there are four main pillars, and that is environmental, attitudinal, physical, and systematic. And it looks at all of those, and it sees how their barriers could be removed to enable disabled people to, to feel like they can fully participate within society. So, an example of an environmental barrier is the built environment. So, a ramp for a wheelchair user, that's an or braille on a door, attitudinal is around people's unconscious biasness around disability. That could include ableism as well. I don't know if you saw the Sophie, what's the surname? What's that? But it was a documentary on Channel 4 on Monday night that looked at how wheelchair users can basically get on off aeroplanes and the barriers that they faced. And there was an example of ableism within that documentary where the pilot of the commercial airline blamed the fact that they were leaving an hour late on the wheelchair usage of the air, that they had to load the wheelchair onto the airplane. But actually, that's not really their fault. That's the actual organizational fault. Therefore, the rest of the passengers were led to believe, that this the reason for the hold up is for the disabled people, really. So that was another example that I picked up on Monday. Communication barriers, so this could be like lack of hearing loops, braille, those kind of things, or even if you have if you're neurodiverse and you want things in another format or on alternative background colors, those kind of things. And then systematic would be things around organizational policies and that kind of thing. That is a rough breakdown of all the social model, and it looks at how to remove the barriers to enable disabled people to live an equitable lifestyle, basically.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. A lot of the suggestions you make there seem quite simple, just changing the color backgrounds on things and having the ramps and all of that. It seems like such easy changes. So definitely it's something that could be done for improving that. And there's a lot of things that people can just generally they're not difficult things. I think one thing that I would pick up from that is the idea of unconscious biases and attitudes for people. How do you think how if someone were to ask you how you could change your the biases, the impact, what sort of way do you think we should be asking society to address these unconscious biases?
I think it stems from education. So the fact is now we've got more and more still people going into or attending mainstream education really helps challenge that. And I think a lot of positive aspects have happened in the last 20 or 30 years. You're always going to get a level of unconscious bias, and we all have some level of it. But it's about how you challenge that and openly discuss it as well. So for example, you could get that with somebody who had the blue badge. The blue badge is associated with wheelchair users, but it's not all about wheelchair users. There's quite a fair number of blue badge holders that have hidden impairments. That if they get seen jumping out of or getting out of a car and they're not immediately a wheelchair user, society judges them because then they think, why have they got a blue badge? But actually they could have a heart impairment, they other hidden impairments. But because the blue badge symbol is that or has been that of a wheelchair society kind of sees that and really hones down on that. So that's that just an example of bias, and there was quite an interesting article. And what an interesting article by Paddy McGuinness' ex-wife. She has 3 autistic children, and she got abused when she was taking them out, and she had the blue badge for one of her children, and she got challenged about why she had a blue badge, and it's not really a nice experience, probably not, and that also down to that the person that probably challenged her has a biasness, but also had another education that said, if you're not a wheelchair user, then why have you got a blue badge? So it's a bit of both, really. It's down to education and people being around disability a lot more, and then from that means you can challenge unconscious bias.
Yeah. So by doing that, it's helping to show people where they're biased as well. It's the whole idea. It's unconscious, isn't it? Seeing people need to know that they have those biases before they can address it. So yeah, education is important, and that's what makes you so important for your role as a speaker and trainer. So it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Yeah. So what advice would you give to employers to make a workspace more inclusive for people with disabilities?
So I think first of all you got to be open, and if you don't have that much experience, then just be open about it and actually welcome it and embrace it. I think knowing about the access to work scheme really helps employers. That's a government scheme that can help with like equipment, some support staff for your employee, and that kind of thing. So I think that is really useful for employers having disabled staff networks within the organisation that can then meet up and discuss issues and to work in improvements that can really help, and also having an inclusive recruitment process. So really looking at your recruitment process and not just saying, oh, if you're disabled, we'll just give you a job interview. I actually really think about if that person was successful or the actual process. Is it really fair and equal to them? Like if you've got a test, something to do, and you're in there and you're like 5 minutes to do it, are you testing them on their ability, or are you testing them on their ability to type fast and to process fast? Some people can process a bit not as fast, but they could probably get a better result. So I do think it's about a fair and equal recruitment process, and then that comes from there.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I certainly would agree with that. I'm just going to play devil's advocate here quickly. Obviously, a lot of these reforms that you talk about are brilliant reforms. They're really necessary, but they do come at a cost. They come at a cost to companies and to the government, and that sort of thing. Like you were saying with the airplanes, that they need to figure out other passengers and tickets, ways of other passengers also getting the tickets and stuff. I'm like I said, devil's advocate here. So how could you make sure, how do you think companies and government could accommodate these what they call these adjustments in a way that it's, well, I suppose you could say fully funded, fully costed.
No, that's yeah. The government responsibility is to set the legislation for companies to follow. So really, it's up to the companies to follow that legislation. But also, it goes deeper than that. So I think there is an economical value to it, obviously, but the purple pound that is the purple pound is the total sum of money that disabled people and their families bring to the UK economy. Just to the UK economy last year, that was £249 billion. That was how much the disabled people have to spend really. If you add it, well, bear in mind that nearly now 1 in 4 people are thought to be disabled in the UK. Roughly about 16.1 million people. That's a lot of people. So by catering for disabled people, you actually have a better chance of making money. So, for example, Marsham Court in Bournemouth spent £70,000 on making their hotel more accessible, and they put in a sensory room, one of the first hotels in the UK to do that. They both put in a ceiling track hoist. So a ceiling track hoist is a piece of equipment to get people who can't weight bear, like me, in and out of bed. And they also put in a hoisting for swimming pool. And since they've done that and advertised it, they've had a lot more customers because they've got those facilities. Although they have spent that much money, they have got a lot more money back because people are willing to, and then when they come, they bring their family and they spend money, and that also brings money to the local economy. So although I take on board the fact it may cost occasionally some money to the actual companies or the government, they will get that back if they invested, for example, in the access to work scheme. That means that more people will hopefully be in work using that and the actual scheme, and then that means that they won't be need support as much from the welfare, from benefits, etc. So it is a difficult one. It is a balancing act between, yes, we want to do this, but also, we want to, we're all here to make money. To be quite honest, I'm here to make money. I'm not gonna lie. So but it's about how you can broaden it out that you can make the most money you can. So if you only really appealing to 3/4 of an audience and you're missing out on that quarter, and how you can make the most from that quarter of the audience that you're missing out on. And that is what it should be about.
So essentially, then, if you invest now, you're gonna get the payment in the long run.
You
Yeah.
will do, but although it depends on what the actual sector is as well, doesn't it? So obviously I'm mainly focused on hospitality, but there's lots of other sectors that do it as well. And then organisations tend to lead by example. So if you're an organisation, you're doing that and you're having a bit more of an inclusive um, experience for your customers, then other organisations will want to copy you because they will want a piece of that pie. But you could be that trendsetter. You could be Marshall Court, for example, who now have a lot of hoteliers contact them because they want to, they want to learn from them about how they developed their hotel and stuff like that.
Yeah, it all comes back to visibility and education. Yeah, that's great. So what advice would you, next question, what advice would you give to somebody, say, with cerebral palsy, who's about to enter the world of work? What advice would you give them?
I think I'd give advice to sales people in general. So I would just say be resilient. I think you have to be resilient as a sales person, no matter what impairment you have. Be open about your impairment. And if you need support, ask. Don't let people assume you need support or assume what support you need. That has to come from you. And don't be afraid to network and to use the tools that you have. That might be access to work, that might be another tool. But there are tools out there that it can support people. It's about finding the actual right tool to for the right person, really, is what I always think.
Yeah, that's great advice. So just the last question I've got for you then. What's your next step? What's your aspiration for the future?
So my aspiration is for disability to be seen in every kind of area of our lives. So on our dating apps, we're not undateable. On our in our parliaments, on our TV screens, all those kind of things. It's only that will challenge people's unconscious biasness toward disability, and then that will then change attitudes. So yeah, we have come a long way, got a long way to go, and hopefully then I can, maybe retire from being a trainer and do something else. But until then, I will keep on doing it, and and just spreading the word about how being inclusive, is ethical, but also will make you a lot more money, which is what we all like.
Yeah, that's brilliant. It's like you said at the start of the video, about the ideal world, you're not needing to be a speaker in the first place. If you get to a stage where you don't need to go and do the training,
Yeah.
we've made it. As disabled people, we've made it.
We have made it. We've made it, and that should be the actual goal. So yeah, that that should be the actual end result too.
Yeah, yeah. Good that we're making that progress. So,
Yeah.
anyway, thank you for doing an interview with us.
Yeah, all
You've
right.
given
Thank you, Shannon, for
us
the opportunity.
very good insights, and it's been great having you. So, thank you for coming and speaking to us.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Okay, so just last thing then, what message would you like to leave people watching here?
So disability isn't just the individuals themselves, but the society they live in. Hey,
Bye.
hey.